Welcome back to this module about how we're going to deliver this coaching effectively. And it starts off with having clarity on what kind of service you're providing. So there is a difference between coaching, consulting, and mentoring. So I thought it would be useful for us to just go through the different definitions of these three types of services. So, in terms of coaching, a coach asks intelligent questions which lead the client to come up with their own solutions. And you could put it like it's like a client-led, it's a client-led journey which stretches their boundaries, helps them reach their goals. So that's kind of how it works. So it's kind of like you're their buddy and you're asking the questions and they're thinking, oh, right, okay, I see how this works. I'm going to try that. So, and then they come up with their own solution. So that's pretty much the way a coach works. Generally, a coach has done it before and they can share their experiences and bring them, move them along on the journey. You don't necessarily have to experience it yourself, but you just need to be proficient in how to ask the right questions. I guess that's pretty much how I would define it. However, other people might define it in different ways. There isn't a wrong or right answer, but this is generally a coach. So thinking about questions to ask and the client coming up with their own solutions. A consultant, on the other hand, has direct experience. So they've actually worked within it, definitely. Or they have qualifications in the topic. So they are an advisor, they're a problem solver, and they're usually hired for a set project or a set time frame. So I've been a consultant in some corporates and they've hired me for, say, 6 days. And we've gone in and we've sorted out an issue. And then I've run some workshops and then that's been the end of our contract. So that's a consultant. And a mentor is definitely someone who has been there before you and they've been where you are. Maybe not exactly the same, but they've been through this process that you've been through or are going through as a client. So they can advise on the course of action that they took and how they worked it out. And the good thing about mentors are they can give you a shortcut to success because they have been on the path before you and they know what doesn't work and what does work, and they can say, well, I tried this and that's what happened for me. So mentors are really that kind of shortcut to success. Now, this is a question that can come up quite a bit around, do you need to be accredited? Now, accreditation is not necessarily, all accreditations aren't equal. So it doesn't mean that if you're accredited, it's necessarily quality, because there's different levels and different organisations who provide accreditation. And so there's not one scale that fits all. So it's not a regulated industry and there's no requirement to be accredited. But that's why things are important, like I say, like sharing, your mentors, where you've learnt from, who you've invested in, because that helps build your credibility up and can show a lot more in many ways than an accreditation can. And also, are you confident in your skills? It's so important that you have a confidence, that inner confidence, because that's going to, in actual practical terms, be more important to your client than an accreditation, because you could be accredited, but you could just feel unconfident in your delivery. And so confidence is something that you need to work on if you're lacking in it. And that's really, really important. So here's a case study. For example, this is me, a lawyer in 2005, sitting at an office full of accreditations and law degrees and law diplomas and training contracts, and I think we had to do some on-the-job training and pass some various sort of CPD qualifications during the training contract. So pretty much tons and tons. Now, the girl on the left would not speak out loud in a team meeting. I certainly wouldn't go on stage and talk about the law, but I had accreditations and qualifications coming out of my ears, accredited by the Law Society. So I've been through all the hoops and I had all the necessary qualifications. However, the girl on the right in 2013, I'd written a book. I was super inspired by that book. And the topic area, I put lots of hours into it. I spent time talking to people about membership sites, learning the whole journey. So you can see that accreditation is not necessarily the route to success, and it's a different world. So if you're working in the 9 to 5, it's very different from being an entrepreneur and the things that you do when you're an entrepreneur, because these experiences are things that you can go on and share with people. And so I would feel way more confident sharing the things that I've experienced as an entrepreneur than I would as a solicitor, even though I was heavily, I've got certificates and qualifications and everything as a solicitor. So I've got experience of launching a business, speaking at events, setting up Facebook groups, coaching, one-to-one. I've done one-to-one coaching. I've done in-person coaching. I've done online coaching. I've done group coaching. I've set up a community. I've run that on Zoom. I've facilitated workshops. I've facilitated my own workshop. I have done collaborations. I've run seminars. I've done a whole load of stuff, as it seems. I've done my accounts. I've done social media sharing on all the platforms. I've been a Business Book Awards judge multiple times. I won awards. So I've launched a podcast myself. I've taught people how to launch podcasts. I've taught people how to grow Facebook groups. So I've done quite a bit. I've run events. So built communities. I could go on. So this is the thing. It's like I feel way more qualified because I've done all these things. I can tell you directly. Like if you say to me, which is the best platform to set up an online course, I can tell you. I can tell you the steps I've taken. I've had clients where I've not set up boundaries and it's gone wrong. I've built communities which didn't get engaged because I realized it was the wrong platform. I've done the things. I've written a book. I've not written a book because I didn't have another coach who kept me accountable during the process. Like the whole thing. There's so many parts to it. So hopefully this illustrates what I'm trying to say. And that is all I can do, illustrate that. I think often, I actually have some certificates in community management, which is quite rare. In that field, because it's quite an upcoming field. But, there's nothing better than being practical and experiencing things firsthand around these things. But I guess and I've got a community management MBA, and so I guess having these things makes me feel a bit more secure because I feel like I've got evidence to show to people. Obviously work with Facebook, so I guess that makes me feel a bit better. But actually I guess my biggest share to you is most of this is around your mindset. Like, how do you feel about yourself? Because when I started thinking about the things I have done, I'm like, okay, but if you don't feel confident in yourself, it doesn't matter if you've done everything that you could possibly do, you're still not going to be successful. So work on the mindset and share the things that you know. And I'm confident in sharing about all of these things because I've done them. And I messed them up, and I've been successful, and I've been not successful, and I've been everything in between. So that's what I'm trying to share with you. So think about all of those things. So, consulting corporates, pitching. I did pitching as well. Oh, that's scary. Doing a pitch. I did that to a room full of entrepreneurs. I actually got offered £250,000 worth of funding at that pitch. So that was quite fun. I've done all these things, and there's me being a coach at the Internet Business School in person, and now I've done it online. So there you go. So that's what I'd say. Write down your own list because I'm sure there's loads of things on it. Testimonials are your friend. Yes, especially ones like this. So like Daniel Priestley wrote on my Facebook, by the way, Claire Perry-Louise is the legend at online courses and communities. She's seen that the best use of online courses and communities is about building and maintaining relationships and creating high-touch businesses that use technology to enhance the relationship further. She is the expert in my opinion, and I would recommend her to anyone who has a great business and wants to reach more people. Like, Daniel wrote that. When I look back at it now, I'm like, oh gosh. It's like literally, that is the best thing, because he wrote it like he wrote a whole paragraph. So that's pretty cool because he's well respected. And but the thing is, though, is I think for a while that just sat somewhere. I think I took a screenshot. I must have done it just now. You see, I was absolutely blown away by it. But then it just sat on my hard drive, and then I was like, oh, gosh, you need to start sharing these things. So I started collecting their testimonials, and they're people I've worked with who share things about me. So that's what I'm saying. Don't dismiss this content that's you can access so easily, because it's gold. It's definitely gold. It helps you so much. So go and take some time, look at what testimonials you've had. Where have people given you good feedback? Because that's how you will build your profile, build your relationships, build your business, build your coaching practice. And it's all there. It's just, within your fingertips. LinkedIn is also a great place. So I like to use LinkedIn to give recommendations to people I've worked with, not because I want them to give me one back, but just because I like to build relationships like that. And people are often staggered because normally people say, can you give me a recommendation? And if they do that, that's fine. But they'll say, well, I'll give you one if you give me one. Well, it's not the best way to build relationships. I mean, it's one way to do it. So I had quite a few recommendations given to me. I've given 34 of them. If you try to match them up, they're probably not the same people, I would suspect. I can't remember, but people have gone on there and give me recommendations. Although actually in that example, so the Sharmeek, now he's the third person down. Now Sharmeek is someone who was connected to me through a community and who had some questions about community building. And I jumped on a call with him and his marketing director, and I gave him some great advice. Now, not normally, but in the past, I've been very guilty of this. And you've got to be careful of this, because I gave him like my best advice. I spent an hour on the phone to him maybe. And he's like, brilliant, thank you. We're going to put this in place. Bye. That was brilliant. He said, if I can help you in any way, let me know. And then he was off. And because it came through a mutual connection, that's pretty much why I did it. But the point is we are in business, and that's not a great way to do business, because he's obviously enhanced his business and I've spent an hour of my time for nothing. And because I'm trying to learn as a coach, there's a couple of things I put in place since then. So now I only have 15-minute pre-consultations with people just to see if they're a right fit. And it's not a time for advice. It's just a time to see if I can help them with the solution they're looking for. And then in this case, he said, can I do anything for you? And I said, would you mind writing me a recommendation? And I asked him straight away. And he did give me a recommendation. So that was really good, because it shows up now and I've got something to show for the fact that I spent an hour with him. And someone who looks at my LinkedIn profile can see that. So it's a great place to give and receive recommendations and to make connections. So make the most of LinkedIn. So there's different ways to deliver coaching and consulting and mentoring. So you can do it in person, video coaching via Zoom or Skype if you're still on Skype, and email. Or you could do it by Voxer coaching, which is a different type of coaching, which is like a walkie-talkie type setup where it's a little bit like WhatsApp, but if you can listen in real time if someone's leaving you a message. So that's another way to do it, and something that's I've explored and offer as well. So in-person coaching, you need to think about, are you charging enough? Because you might need to factor in travel time. So in fact, this was in Palm Springs, and I live in the UK, so I think I might have just completely blown that slide. Factor in travel time. Yeah, the travel time. It was quite a long way to that meeting, but still, there's a longer story behind that. But anyway, you might want to consider having a day rate, because otherwise you're exchanging hours for your time, and that's just like having a job. So you might have a day rate, and remember this, and it's one of those concepts that you might hear a few times. I wish I could remember the story completely, but there's a story where someone goes along and they need something doing, and he says, I can fix that. And the person has wanted it fixed, and they got loads of quotes and nobody can do it. And it's costing them loads and loads of money because they can't get it fixed. And the guy comes along and he says, I can fix that for you. And he says, it'll be £10,000. And the guy goes, oh, brilliant, fabulous. So he pays him his £10,000, and then the guy goes and he gets his screwdriver, or I can't quite remember the story, but he gets his screwdriver, I think it is, and it takes him 2 minutes to fix it. And then the guy says, that took you 2 minutes, and I paid you £10,000. And he says, yes, but you didn't know how to do that. And that's the whole point, because the person couldn't get the solution, and £10,000 to them, for £10,000, they were like, this is the solution we want, and we're prepared to pay £10,000 for it. But then what happened? The person who'd paid the £10,000 was like, but it only took 2 minutes. You charged way too much. But it's the knowledge. The guy knew what to do with the screwdriver. He knew what to change, what to do. And he knows that because he's invested tons of hours, and maybe he's had mentors or coaches or whatever it might be. And I can't quite remember all the outline of the story, but it's a true story, and it's a very good example of knowing your value. So know your value. And even if something takes 15 minutes, it doesn't mean, things that I know because I've invested in all those mentors I shared with you in the previous module. I know because I spent thousands of hours on online courses, reading training books, putting things in place, experience. So that's why I can charge more, because I'm confident that I've put the time and the hours and invested in myself enough to be getting to those figures. So there you go. So if you are doing group coaching, you can deliver it online, or you can do it to a group of participants. And if you're doing it for a group of participants, so I've done a group training program. I hired a place in London, a hotel, conference room, and each participant will pay £247. And so you're getting £2,470 a day if you have 10 participants for that. And maybe if you're doing a day rate, maybe you're £500 a day. So you can see you can mark up and get a lot more if you do the group coaching. And it's the same stuff, but you're doing it as a group coaching. You could also add in some benefits like group accountability or some kind of community to keep that, to get people to really see the value in that. Obviously, you need to factor in room hire and refreshments and any training materials, but you can see that you can make a lot more from doing a group coaching program. Doing it online, Zoom's free for one-to-one calls, which is great. So you can get started, you can see people and connect. And I think so many people now are much more familiar with Zoom. You just send a link out and people can just link on. And then you can do group coaching via Zoom. So you could do that maybe as a monthly membership fee. And it could be a mastermind or group coaching. And you could, so you're being paid a monthly membership fee, and you only have to show up on one occasion, or however many times you decide. But you can show up to 6 people on one occasion, as opposed to show up on 6 occasions for 6 people. So think about group coaching. So here's my case study, Like-Hearted Leaders, which is I set up on the back of an online course that I attended. We meet every Friday for an hour on Zoom, and then members of the community, they share masterclasses with the other members of the community, and there's a monthly fee for it. So it's, in terms of the work, there is some work to it. I do send out a weekly email, there's a WhatsApp group, but really I'm facilitating an hour and a half meeting every Friday. And it is a big commitment. I've been doing it for the last year. I think we've only not met maybe on 3 occasions over the last year. So it is a commitment for me. However, it is a great way to have an income that's a regular income that comes in every month. And it's not a big commitment for the people paying it, because the membership fee is fairly cheap. So there's a case study for you about using a membership model or building community. So now I'm going to share some coaching essentials with you. So preparation is key. Remember this, Don't set off without having everything ready for your journey. So you must find solutions for your clients, and you need to inspire them to take action. And so if you just log on now to the call and you haven't looked at their website previously, or you haven't done some research and you don't really know what you're getting into, you are going to struggle to prepare, to give the great results that you would aspire to give to clients. So you can prepare in advance by, like I say, looking at social media profiles, looking at their website. Maybe you'd like to email them in advance to understand, what are they looking for? What outcomes do they want to look for? Remember what I said in previous modules. Let's look for outcomes, because that's the most important thing to your clients, that they get the outcome they're looking for. You can create an onboarding questionnaire, so you can ask different questions. I have an onboarding questionnaire for people who might want to work with me, because then I can understand what they're looking to get early on, rather than waste time with people who I'm not the right fit for. And if you're not sure, you can speak to your own mentors and ask them, if you find something out and they say, well, we want to cover this, and they don't tell you, if they don't tell you things and you're like, oh, I don't know if I know about that, you can speak to your mentors before you get on the call. So it's always good to prepare in advance. You can also add accountability to your online coaching, and I would definitely recommend you do this. So it means, the coaching sessions ultimately plant a seed for your client. You say, have you tried this? Or what about doing that? But then that's fine. You can have a nice conversation, but that seed needs watering. It needs time and attention, because no action equals no results. And if you don't get results, you're not going to get any more coaching sessions. So it's really to your advantage to make sure that your clients are getting results, because if they're getting results, they're going to have more income coming in, or they're going to feel more excited about working with you, and then they're going to want to renew their coaching agreement with you. So think about that. Think about how you can build that into your business model. And later on in the course, we're going to be talking about some coaching platforms you can use, which can help you keep up and make things keep accountable to, so your clients you can see what your clients are up to and whether they're reaching their goals. So I'll share those later on. So it's useful, and I do this, keep a log from your coaching sessions about what you covered in your coaching sessions, what action steps were set during your coaching sessions, and what's required and by what date, because we need dates. So like I said about when I was writing my first book, I had a date and I needed it to be back with the proofreader and the editor by January, and so it ended up me having 5 weeks to write the book, because that's when I needed to get it in to get it published by February. So get the dates in and follow up at the next session. Did you do this? Did you do that? Why didn't you do it? Or all of those questions. And if you haven't written them down, you just won't seem to make any, you won't make you won't take any steps forward and won't get that momentum. Now, growth and contribution are one of the fundamental human needs. And where we feel like we're growing as people, we feel more connected and we feel more inspired. Where we feel, and that's why people in, say, traditional careers like to move up the career ladder, because that feels like you're making progress. Where you feel stuck and stagnated, you will tend to lead to depression and feelings of unfulfillment and that kind of thing. So you need to be thinking about, do your coaching sessions help your clients to grow? Because ultimately that's what we want to do, and that's what they're paying us for. They're paying us to help them grow and achieve things in their life and business. So you might have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs are the needs that humans need to be satisfied. And the needs lower down in the hierarchy need to be satisfied before individuals can satisfy the needs higher up. So you'll see on that triangle at the bottom are psychological needs. So we need food, water, warmth, and rest. That's like our basic needs to survive. On top of that, the next thing that's most important is safety needs, so security and safety. So that's why We can sometimes keep quiet when we're in a job that we're not happy with, or if things happen at work, we will not be overt or communicate our dissatisfaction, because ultimately we need safety as humans and we want to feel secure. So if we start making ripples at work, we may lose our jobs, which may mean we lose our houses, which may mean we split up from our spouses, and so goes on. So that's why many people stay stuck, because they're our basic needs. Now, on top of that, the psychological needs we need are belongingness and love. And that's where community comes into it, and intimate relationships and having friends. We need to feel like we belong to something. The tribe is super important and has been really important for hundreds of years. And back in the day, we'd live in tribes and we wouldn't leave the tribe, because if we left the tribe, we would be, we wouldn't be safe, because the tribe provided the protection against other tribes and also provided the food. And that's where you get the hunter-gatherers, you get the women staying at home, looking and nurturing and looking after the needs, the community like that, and then the men would be going out, bringing back the food, etc., and protecting the camps. And then on top of that, it's esteem needs, so prestige and the feeling of accomplishment. That's why things like social media and sharing our wins and people liking our posts. Like if you put a post out there and no one likes it, it doesn't feel great, does it? It feels like that we haven't quite achieved something if people don't like our posts. So it's really important that you understand the psychology of humans, because the psychology of humans is what fuels every relationship. So that's why when you're coaching, if you're putting your clients down and saying, well, why didn't you do it? Well, you're not going to win now because you're not going to be successful because you didn't do what I said. It's not going to make them feel like they want to work with you anymore, because ultimately we're all humans. And then self-fulfillment, like self-actualization, is right at the top. So achieving your full potential, including creative activities, that's right at the top. And it's not obviously a basic need, and it comes higher up. But the more that you move people up the scale, the happier they're going to be, and the longer your coaching relationship is probably going to last for. So some other practicalities are a professional looking website will pay you dividends, because people will realize you're serious and haven't just set up overnight. So first impressions are really important, and having a website that looks professional, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to have everything on it, but having a point of contact and a space online, especially if you're going to be an online coach, is really important. But it doesn't mean you need to invest thousands of pounds in it. There's lots of ways. I'm going to talk about websites in a later module, but you don't have to invest thousands in it, but you just need to have some kind of presence, and a brand presence is important. And again, we're going to talk about that later on. Now, when you're setting the goals, both for your client and for yourself, remember there's the traditional adage of SMART. So SMART goals. So these stand for specific. So you need to have specific goals. They need to be measurable. They need to be attainable. So if you say, I'm going to fly to the moon, it's probably not attainable. And so you're going to not believe yourself, because you're like, well, that goal's never going to happen. They need to be relevant. So if you're growing your business, but your goal is losing 3 stone at the gym, it's not relevant to that goal. Is not relevant to your business. And time-based. So I'm going to go through an example. So for example, a client who wishes to build an engaged community, you need to ask that client, what does success look like? Because engaged is tangible, and what signifies engaged? So does 2 likes on a post, is that engagement? Yes, but it's not 200 likes on a post. But if someone's only ever had 0 likes on a post, 2 is engaged. And you could argue, well, that is engaged compared to when you started working with me. But you need to clarify this early on. So you need to look at where you are now. So look at where your client is now. So in this example, maybe they get 10 shares per post. But what are they actually looking for? in the future. So is that they want 30 shares per post. So you can see you've got 10 and you need to move to 30. And so now you've got a clear, you've got goalposts, you know where you're going. You're at 10. And so if you get to 15, you can see you're going in the right direction. If you go down to 8, you can see that there's something needs adjusting. The next thing that's, in the time piece is, when does the client need to achieve it by? Is it tomorrow? Is it 6 months? Is it 5 years? When does that client need to achieve it? And you need to know these things. Otherwise, you're not going to be giving the best service and you're not going to get the results that your client's looking for. It's also important to know why it's important to the business. Because sometimes people think they need 10 shares or 30 shares, but it might be because of those things around Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because people want, more recognition and they want to inflate their ego. But is that important to the business? No, it isn't. What's important is maybe 30 shares means they will get 30 more sales to their website. But if you're not tracking it, you're not going to know. So you need to think about these points when you are coaching. And is it possible? And what actions will help to achieve this? So is it possible to move from 10 to 30 shares per post? Well, you can look for evidence. Can anybody else get 30 shares on their posts? Have a look around, see if people are getting 30 shares. Okay, they are getting 30 shares. It is possible. And how do they do that? And then there'll be a whole process around your coaching about understanding why people share posts, the psychology of it, the type of content, all the things that you'll be doing as an online coach. So hopefully that gives you an example of how you can start measuring and being accountable and understanding what goals you should be working with your client with. Now, in terms of coaching, thinking about times and platforms, so you might need to consider time zones, because if you are in the UK and you're working with American clients, it might mean you need to work later on into the evening. The other thing is be flexible on platforms. So just because you like Zoom, some people might be used to Skype or prefer to audio message or use WhatsApp or Voxer. So think, even though you might have a way to do training, if someone's struggling with using the platform you've chosen, so I do coaching and traditionally, not for me, I didn't set this up, but it's the coaching I do has been traditionally done on Skype. And I've noticed more and more people are saying Skype and not really, when the coaching began, Skype was what everyone used. But now I've noticed that people are a bit more, sometimes it's tricky to get them on Skype, or they don't pick up when you call them because they haven't got a Skype account. So I think you need to be mindful of the times. And now Zoom is obviously more of an option. And yeah, remember, especially like if you're using Zoom, record the sessions. I spoke about this earlier, about record the sessions so you can review your coaching. And you might also want to add that on, like if you want a recording, you could charge more for that possibly, or you could at least share it with your client, or have it as a backup. If your client says, well, you didn't tell me to do that, you've got a backup to say, well, I've recorded it and these are the things that we went through during the session. If you can, always opt for video coaching, because it's so much easier to connect with a client where you can see them. You get the visual clues. So if you're explaining something and you can tell by looking at them whether or not they're understanding what you're saying. And if you don't do it via video, it's going to be much harder for you to understand whether your coaching is landing. You need to factor in these costs to your pricing. So if you have to pay, if you're doing group coaching, for example, you can only use Zoom for 40 minutes before you have to go onto a paid account. So you're going to need to make sure that you factor that into your coaching if you are using something like Zoom. Boundaries. This is a lesson that I've learned over time. Set out your boundaries around the coaching really early on. So when does the coaching start and when does it end, for example? And if you're doing hourly coaching, what's the contact between the coaching sessions? So some people might have a coaching session with you and then start emailing you every 5 minutes after the coaching session. Now, is that part of the agreement or is it not? Now, if you set out, it doesn't mean you can't reply, but if you set out, well, we don't do the coaching is per hour. If you want to add email support onto this, then there'll be an extra charge for it. But at least people know where they are. Doesn't mean you can't message them in between sessions, but make sure you set it out really clearly, because people will take clues from how you show up. So if you start sending them one thing over and you send them a bit of information, and then they'll be expecting it and saying, can you send that over? Can you send that over? And then it get really draining. Set out your payment terms, whether you're taking payment in advance, which is always helpful, because people then have paid up front and there's no chasing afterwards, which can be stressful. And then a cancellation policy. So yesterday I had a call, and it was an introductory call, but they didn't show up, and I made time and space in my calendar. I'd got ready for that time. I was on the call at 3:15, and they didn't turn up, and it's frustrating. Now, if you're coaching, you can have a 24-hour cancellation period, and if they don't cancel, they lose that session. Or maybe you'll offer to redo it, but make sure you set that out early on, and you can get them to agree to that, get them to sign something to say that they agree to the terms, and then it's so much simpler because everyone knows where they are, and there's no sort of, well, what about this or what about that? So get that sorted early on. Now, this is one of the things that I've really enjoyed, not really enjoyed, but has really helped me a lot, because that whole conversation, if you meet a friend and you say, oh, should we go out for coffee? Oh, yeah, let's do that. And then you say, okay, you free next week? Yes, I'm free next week. And then something happens, you never get around to it. Well, that's the same with booking appointments. So I would suggest you use a booking system. So I use Book Like a Boss. It automatically creates a Zoom link and sends that out. Obviously, you have to set it up. You can actually take payments through Book Like a Boss as well. And it just makes it swift. So you open up your calendar for when you want to do your coaching, and then they can automatically just book in. Calendarly is another one like that. And I think you can, if you're just one person, you can get that for free. But it makes things so simple. And then you can pre-approve, say with Book Like a Boss, sessions to make sure that your diary is still free. But it actually gets more people in your diary, and it saves all that toing and froing. And one of my values is freedom. And sometimes when someone says, I need to book a session with you, it kind of, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be tied up now. I won't be able to do anything. But that takes away all of that conversation in my head, because it's just in there. I'm like, oh, okay, there's my appointment. Whereas when I have to make a decision, it's like, if you're deciding to go away, should I go away on Thursday or should I go away on Friday? And then your mind goes into sort of monkey brain, and you're thinking, well, if I go on Thursday, this will happen. If I go on Friday, and then you just get into a whole massive session in your head. So take that away. That's my advice. Take it away. Just get Book Like a Boss or Calendly, and take away all that pressure. And remember, and I've touched on this slightly, but you need to be empathetic and act with empathy. So if they don't do what you say, don't ridicule them. Seek to understand, why haven't they taken an action? Maybe it's rooted in fear. Maybe it's lack of confidence. Maybe they haven't got time. Understand them. Maybe they've got a young family, or maybe there's other pressures, or maybe they didn't understand your instructions. So you'll become a better coach the more you understand your clients. So do not ridicule them, because who wants to work with someone who's going to make them feel bad? No one does. So that is definitely something to think about. So hopefully that's given you a few more things to add and giving you some more insights. And I look forward to seeing you in the very next module. So until then, take care. Bye.